This is turning into a real adventure, and I am going to document part of this. This is partially a quick review and first reaction to a new camera. Well, it's new to me, at least. It's not new. This is the Blackmagic Pocket Cinema Camera 4K. It's new to me, but not to the industry. It's been around for a while, and it's a very popular camera. In fact, I like the idea so much that I bought the 6K G2 just so I can compare them, and that'll be in a future video, but it hasn't arrived yet. And I want to get into why I bought it and what it's going to be done, what I'm going to do with it, and some of the problems and some of the other stuff. But I first want to kind of plug it in literally for the first time in my studio to see what I can do with it and see if it solves some problems and see if it does create new problems, how to solve them. And I'm going to hit my button and probably this won't work, but here we go. All right, so by the way, one of the problems I have is because of this new setup the way it is, I can't hear the audio there, so I'm only assuming there was audio for that. And if there wasn't, then you'll just next time hear me talking over it until I fix that. And I kind of know how to fix it, and I did it once before in previous videos, and then I undid it because it created a different problem. So this is the thing about studio equipment. If you try to fix one problem, sometimes it creates another one that's just as big. So anyhow, I'll get into the details about why I decided to buy the ATEM, well, not the ATEM, the Blackmagic cameras. First of all, I like the company. I like their products. I went kind of in with the Mini Pro ISO first, and I kind of liked it, and I realized it had some shortcomings, a lot of them, and I want to get into that in a future video. And then because of those problems, I decided, well, I'll get the Extreme ISO with 8 inputs. I says, I don't really need the extra inputs, but I like the extra buttons that it has. Another thing, long story short, I'm actually using all 8 inputs, and I actually could use more. But that's a whole different story, and there's a way to get around that too, and we'll talk about it another date too. So anyhow, why did I buy it? I have had some technical problems, things that didn't work, and then I didn't have a backup plan. So I decided I need to record in camera. And one of my cameras, it's a Canon 90D, you can either use the HDMI for clean output to something like an ATEM, or you could record to the SD card, but you can't do both at the same time. Now, my other camera over here, the Lumix G85, it can do both, which is great. And had I decided to hit the record button recently on an important video, I would have at least had the backup when things went awry. And what do I mean by things went awry? I used the record button on my ATEM Extreme ISO, and for whatever it's worth, after 5 minutes, I think things just shut down. So I recorded a 15-minute video, and then when I was done after the 15 minutes, and by the way, that 15-minute video was very important to me because I record the last minute of each year and the first minute of each year, and I've been doing this since 1991, right? So I want to capture whatever I'm doing at the stroke of midnight. And it's not something I can just re-record. Been doing it for all those years. And eventually I'll make maybe a thing. I'm going to eventually put that out there. All of them. Every year, never missed a year. So it was so important to me. Thankfully, I decided to put a couple extra cameras out. Put some GoPros out. All right, so I shot some stuff on GoPros. They were my backup, but I really would have rather had the original images from the cameras. And had I had a Blackmagic camera, there's a button when you hit the record that can actually trigger it to record in each of the cameras. So I'm going to replace my 2 primary cameras with Blackmagic cameras. So that's part of the story. There's more to it. Let's just start with that. So anyhow, here I am. I have, and I don't know if I could show it over in this video right here. Can I? Yeah, I think I have a view that could show the lunacy that's at my desk right now. So I think on camera 5, you could see here's the Blackmagic right there. There's the box. There's my ATEM. And you can see there's the display, and it's literally at the opening menu where you first get this thing. Oh, and I have camera number 2 actually pointing to that screen. So we are going to use this camera essentially for the first time on here. And by the way, I'm going to show you a peek ahead. I'm going to switch to the view from that camera. So here I am on the view of the G95, And I'm going to switch over to the $1,300, and I bought the new $2,000 one, ATEM, well, not the ATEM, the Blackmagic 4K pocket. And here we go, drum roll. Whoa! That's what it's looking like before I do anything on the setup, just so you know. That's where it starts off. And for those who are familiar, and here I am, see, I'm not a focus too, but that's a whole part of the equation here. So I'm going back to my G95 again. So when you take it out of the box and you plug it in, that's literally what you're going to be seeing out there. It's washed out looking on the screen, but it's absolutely washed out looking on the HDMI. For a technical reason, that's because it's using a flat output, and it expects your software to do something with that. No, normally I get that. When you're shooting RAW, you want this whole flat appearance so that you can then play with the levels later. I was shocked when I first took it out and I plugged it in, and I've only been using it just a few minutes, essentially, and it did that. But I know that there's a reason behind that, and we're going to start going through that. I'm going to switch over to camera 2 and start answering some questions. I'm going to actually try to do that by actually watching my finger and aiming and aiming. Oh, you know what? I'm going to have to stand up because I can't see that way. But I'm going to push the button. And I'm doing this kind of live-ish. So here we go. Up. English. Okay. Oh. Well, there you go. That is actually the only thing on that menu. And here I am. And on the back of that camera, I am there, and I am still out of focus. And by the way, there's a focus button on the back of the camera, which of course I can't reach either. And that's part of the other reason why I bought these cameras, because as a self-shooter, you have a choice. You could pre-focus or you can autofocus. Now, the advantage to the autofocus is I can hold something up in front of the camera and hope that it will focus on that. Now, of course, it only does that if it thinks that there's no face in the picture. You see the challenge here? It's a challenge. So I'm trying to get it to focus on this, but the camera's not doing it. If I block my face entirely and I put something in front of it, it might focus on it, but I can't really tell when the camera's going to do a focus. And then one other problem that I've had, especially again on another important video, is I turned my head. Now, I'm not watching the screen here, but when I turned my head, the face detection that's on the camera by default switched over to good old Baby Yoda. And then I had my glasses on, and because the clearest face that had eyes was Baby Yoda, it focused on that, and it remained focused on that even though I eventually turned myself around. Then I had to go like this and say, hey, look at me. I'm the most important character in here. So there's a plus and a minus. I used to just keep the autofocus off all the time, and then I'd pre-focus. But if I move my cameras around or I want to show something off, it was a real pain in the neck. And I actually have some workarounds that don't cost any money. And there are things that a lot of streamers will do, like you could maybe put a cardboard box where your face is going to be and put it on like a tripod, and then you pre-focus on that because, again, if you're a single shooter, you can't go to the back and then manually adjust the focus if you actually don't have a subject. If you got a buddy with you, you could tell them, hey, sit where I'm going to sit, and I want to focus on you, then I'll switch places and focus on me. So it's one of those challenges. So what happened is after I got my ATEM and I looked at their software, I noticed that there's buttons on the ATEM Extreme and in their software. In fact, I could show the software easily. And if I go to cameras, there's the camera that's on the air right now, which is camera 4. Camera 4 is just my desktop. But somewhere along the lines, there goes stuff that doesn't belong there. And I have too many cameras here. But camera 7 is the one we're actually using for the ATEM itself. So, not the ATEM, the Blackmagic camera. So the point is that there's a little focus button in that corner. So I'm going to switch over to 7. And now I'm going to, oh, that's tricky. I need to look at 4 on the screen. And I'm going to hit the focus button. I'm going to have to switch back to 7 so I can actually see it. There. Now, I'm still washed out, but I'm in focus, and I'm on hopefully camera 7. So now you're seeing layer 2. You've turned it on, and you have it's still flat, right? It's still flat. It's very close to me, by the way, so it's kind of a tight view, but here I am. I'm flat. Now, there are things inside the camera that can be set and should be set if you're planning to use it the way I'm using it now. So there are things called LUTs, lookup tables, where colors are mapped out. And you can change them on the fly. And then once you select a LUT that has your look, you could turn it on. The way it's turned on this particular camera is there are programmable buttons, or you can do it through the menus. Okay, and I can go back to the menus a little later, maybe in a more in-depth video. But there's a button, because there are 3 function keys at the top of the camera, and the middle one, button number 2, turns on basically an essential there. So, and by the way, I just to be clear, I have changed no other settings so far other than turning on that basically that LUT and hitting the focus. So back to over here, and now we're talking, this is my camera 1. Eventually it'll be replaced. Well, actually camera 2 will be replaced by this camera, and then camera 1 will be replaced by the 6K when it arrives. So I'm not actually recording in 6K, and that's the second problem I had. When I started upgrading my channel, I decided I'm going to do everything in 4K from now on. But then the workflow and the editing and all that other stuff started to drag me down, and I produced less videos because it was taking too long to do it, and I don't have an editor, an editing person. I have editing software. So I decided, well, the best flow for me is to just hit the record button on the ATEM, do all my camera switches as they come along, whatever they may be. I could switch to whatever cameras or desktops or my top views and my bottom views and my 7, and now I can even do my my intro, which I'm going to stop. So I can do all of those things, right? And I don't need to edit it later. And even the audio, I'm doing that. You could probably see through here. No, here. That's over here. That's going through a Rodecaster Pro 2. So all the audio and the mixing, if I wanted to bring in other stuff, is there. So now I'm back to over here. So why the changes in the flow? I can do all this editing live, but the bottom line is that once I hit that record, and of course I definitely am going to start doing some live feeds, once I hit that record, everything's now 1080p, which isn't a horrible thing. I mean, 1080p is TVs. Most TV shows are 1080p. And even Blu-ray 4K discs that you buy that say they're 4K, they're really kind of 2K-ish. So 1080 is not a horrible thing. But I bought all these high-end cameras because I want true 4K. So here's the thing. If I take my videos and I use this model, the ISO, this is the ATEM Mini Pro ISO, it will record all the streams at the same time. And because these are now Blackmagic cameras, boy, this took a long time to get to this story, right? If I use a Blackmagic camera and attach external hard drives to each one, and by the way, the reason I'm using external hard drives, this one's a Sabrent, is because memory cards are really expensive that are fast enough. So if you want a card that you could put into an ATEM, not an ATEM, a Blackmagic camera, it's got to be fast, which means it's going to be expensive and small. Like a 256 gigabyte card is like $100. Probably cheaper at some point, but it's $100 for essentially a 256K card. But I can buy external NVMe drives like this one here that have either a Crucial or a Samsung NVMe, and these are relatively cheap. So I'll be recording the original 4K. When I hit that record button, my 4K videos will also be recorded inside of the Blackmagics. You follow the flow so far. So that means I'm recording in 1080 on the hard drive on the back of the ATEM Mini Extreme ISO, but I'll also have corresponding versions with the exact same angles and focus and colors and everything. Well, almost with the colors. The colors you have to grade out later, but that's a whole separate story. You can install another LUT. So what does that all translate down to? I will have 4K versions, or 6K, because the other one's a 6K camera, of everything that are syncable to the 1080 project file. This is starting to make a little bit of sense here. So if I know that that these videos were recorded literally at the same time, I can take those 1080 videos and use them when I'm recording or pushing it out live. But if I really want a high-end version of that video, the 4K versions of those recordings are now stored inside of the camera, and then I can sync that up in the timeline and almost use the 1080 as a proxy of some sort. But they're directly substitute. You could directly substitute them, put them on the timeline right on top of each other, and the 4K version, having started at the exact same time, should be replacing. You should be able to replace the old video, and with all the other stuff the way you did it. Now, I don't know how that's actually going to flow, and for all I know, it's going to be another disaster, but I'm going to attempt to do that, and if I can figure out how to do that, I'll show how it's done later on my channel. So I've got a lot to unpack over here. Literally, I've got boxes of stuff, lenses. I'm going to go over different kinds of lenses that I have. I've got problems and problems and problems. Let's go back to our new ATEM. So here we are, ATEM, and I did not adjust the ISO. I did not adjust the frame rate. This is literally exactly the way it is when you take this out of the box, because I literally just took it out of the box just a little bit before I put it on my desk. So I am now, and so I would probably want to adjust the gain or the ISO, maybe the shutter speed. Excuse me, not shutter. Well, I would the shutter speed, but also the iris setting, or the bring it down. This is a f2.6 lens on here, and so anyhow, my plan is to use this camera and the 6K to replace my other cameras to hopefully be able to record content directly to hard drives, sync them up. Hopefully later, if nothing else, I have an awesome backup. Every time I hit record, it'll record inside of the two cameras, or actually outside of them, because I'm using external hard drives. Right now, I'm recording this on the back of the ATEM, and that's my primary. And again, part of the reason for me wanting to do this in the first place, I'm looking at the wrong cameras, was that when I was recording my important annual video, the ISO did not record properly. And I'd like to see if anybody else has had similar problems. I know from looking around, it's a common problem, unfortunately. There's no definitive answer as to why it happens, but there are times when you're doing something that you really need a backup. And thankfully for me, I put a GoPro on top of my camera, so it's approximately the same angles, but clearly not the same video. You're not getting that DSLR look, which is what this is. So that's what I'm doing. Going to be doing some follow-ups on this, and I'm going to try to push this video out pretty much unedited, which probably makes it a little longer than it should be or could be. In fact, I think we're topping 18 minutes. That's probably about all I could say about this at the moment. But suffice it to say, the channel is about fixing problems as they come up and sharing what I find as solutions. I'll be looking at how we solve lens problems, sound problems, sync problems, color problems, all that stuff in an upcoming video. And I definitely want to talk a lot about what I've done with the ATEM Mini Pro and Extreme ISOs. I found certain things that I love about them, and certain things that I hate about them. And there's certain things that are still puzzling me, and maybe some people can give me feedback, and I'll try to relay that to the people watching these videos. So hopefully you found your something in here that's of use to you. Maybe this, if you're on the fence about whether you should or could buy one of these and what it means and why am I doing it, keep on the channel and take a look, and as things come up, I will share it here. And there's so much to unpack coming in the next bunch of videos, so stick around.